So welcome to our presentation, Samvera Tech 101.
Good morning. My name is Alisha Evans. I am a Black woman in my early 30s with brown eyes and black curly hair.
And my name is Shana Moore. I'm also a Black woman in my early 30s with dark hair and eyes. My pronouns are she and her. We are both software engineers at Not8, but we are still relatively new to working with Samvera applications. For that reason, we thought our insights would be valuable in building this beginner-friendly presentation because, trust us, the learning curve can feel a little steep and overwhelming at times. There are a lot of terms to know, and we've had a lot of questions along the way. So today we will be breaking down the common terms you will hear when working with Samvera to help you understand what they are and why they are being used. We've divided these terms into the 5 categories you see here: Samvera, data stores, background jobs, user interfaces, and Samvera applications. Starting with the basics, what is Samvera? When you hear the term Samvera, it may refer to one of 2 things. First, it is the name of the community that maintains a group of software. And it also often refers to the actual pieces of code and technologies that, when combined, make up the Samvera stack. Traditionally, the Samvera stack is made up of a number of Ruby on Rails based components called gems, in conjunction with 3 other open source software products: Solr, Fedora, and Blacklight. There's some flexibility here, but we will be revisiting that point soon. The stack was designed so that users could easily interact with Fedora without needing to be programmers. And it provides the building blocks for an institution to create and fully customize a flexible and extensible digital repository solution. At the foundation level, everything is built on top of Ruby on Rails, which is an open source full stack web application framework built with the Ruby programming language. What is a framework? A framework is a collection of code, tools, and utilities that adhere to a specific structure when writing software. Frameworks can help to make code more organized, and it also allows developers to be more productive instead of reinventing the wheel. You can think of a framework like a stencil. If you were given the task to cut out 1,000 pumpkin-shaped holiday cards, you could manually draw and cut each and every one of them. Or you could use a pumpkin-shaped stencil or tool to punch them out all at once, for example. From there, you can customize them as you wish, but they are fundamentally the same since they were cut out from the same stencil. Likewise, frameworks like Ruby on Rails emphasize convention over configuration, which increases efficiency for developers and makes it easier to collaborate with others as well, because the foundation of the applications are the same. From there, it can be fully customized to meet specific needs. Next, let's talk about data stores. A data store is a repository for continuously storing and managing collections of data. When I say data store, you can think of it as a physical library, but for digital objects in our context. Solr is an index-based data storage used to power the search functionality of our Samvera applications. It's quick because it allows for indexing records by ID, as well as by other metadata like author, which means a record can be linked to multiple pointers and referenced in many different ways. It answers the question, what items have metadata that match, and returns the IDs to look up the actual data in a database. Although this analogy is not as flexible as Solr, a library index card is similar to how Solr works. Index cards contain metadata of a book you are trying to find in a library, but it is not the actual book itself. It has a numerical index which points to the actual location of the book, which is where data stores like Fedora comes in. So you can think of Fedora as the bookshelves in a library. It is used as the persistence layer, and it is where the actual content and its associated metadata are stored. But thanks to integration with a gem called Valkyrie, Fedora is no longer a hard requirement for the Samvera stack. Valkyrie is a data mapper that is used with data stores. It's a gem for enabling multiple backends for the storage of files and metadata in Samvera. In other words, it's how we manage and save objects to a database. You may hear of another gem called Active Fedora, but there's currently ongoing efforts to replace it with Valkyrie because it offers much more flexibility. Active Fedora is tightly coupled with Postgres and MySQL database drivers. It can only talk to one data source. Valkyrie can talk to various versions of Fedora and other storage engines as well. So we will likely continue seeing a phase out of Active Fedora in favor of Valkyrie. Moving on to background jobs. Normally, a web application receives a request from the outside world and does some processing, such as querying a database, to immediately return a response within a few milliseconds. Excuse me. Other times, those requests require a longer time to complete. Because these requests cannot be processed immediately and return a response, it's better to hand them off to what is known as a background job. To not interrupt the normal synchronous workflow of an application, background jobs are processed asynchronously on a separate thread or are created as a separate process entirely. In a real-world Samvera-related example, if I'm bulk importing and processing 500 records in an application, I'm impatient. I don't want to wait for the process to complete before I'm able to do something else. So bulk importing and processing would be the perfect task to hand off to a background job. I can continue working while the records process outside of my view versus waiting around for what would feel like an unresponsive web page to load. Sidekiq is a popular choice for this, but there are other options as well. Sidekiq uses threads to handle many jobs at the same time in the same process. It's used with Redis to store all of its jobs and operational data.
Next, we'll be talking about user interfaces, which is how our users interact with our app. Blacklight is a user interface option maintained by Project Blacklight. While it was adopted as one of the core components of the Samvera tech stack, it predates Samvera and therefore is used by those in and out of the Samvera community. The Blacklight gem provides our users with the ability to search and/or browse the metadata that we've indexed in Solr, right out of the box. You can use these facets to browse items that are grouped according to predefined metadata keywords like format, language, and author, as you see on your screen. Or you can do an open-ended search that returns results based on whatever term or terms that you searched for. Although the out-of-the-box solution, once configured with our own metadata standards, is fully deployable, it is also highly customizable. One of the most obvious changes is adding our own repository style guidelines so that our app reflects our larger brand identity. In addition to styling, however, we have the ability to use several plugins. Some of these plugins allow us to tailor our apps for the specific type of metadata we have, which we'll discuss next, while some plugins allow us to do things like add a gallery view or a slideshow view. In maintaining our library analogy, Blacklight is like the catalog cabinet that holds a library's index cards. The Spotlight plugin is the first of 3 plugins that we'll discuss. It's an extension of the Blacklight gem, so it too offers full metadata searching and faceted browsing, plus display capabilities. The difference between the two, as the name suggests, is that the Spotlight plugin allows us to create attractive, feature-rich websites that spotlight a particular digital collection. Similar to how museums have lots of items but showcase them in groups. As a librarian, curator, cultural institution, etc., we can have a large data set but present a curated exhibit. One of the most notable things about the gem is that it's self-serviced. That means that we don't need a developer to update our interface. Instead of writing code, site administrators would have access to a dashboard that allows us to update the collection, navigation headers, search result behaviors, and more through the use of forms, select boxes, and other easy-to-use methods. GeoBlacklight was created with the goal of building a better way to discover, share, and access geospatial data, which simply means data that has locational information tied to it, like coordinates, an address, city, or zip code. For instance, the image you see now is from the Big Ten Academic Alliance GeoPortal, showcasing a tile layer containing an authoritative tiled elevation contours from 2017 for Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It is also based on Blacklight, but it extends the Blacklight functionality for geographical purposes, like adding map views of our search results. It being based on Blacklight means that it connects to Apache Solr for indexing, but it also must use a relational database like Postgres or MySQL. By now, we're catching on that each of these plugins are built on top of Blacklight. So just like Spotlight and GeoBlacklight, ArcLight has its own niche. It's specifically tailored to support the discovery and digital delivery of information in archives. Each institution can have one or more repositories, and each repository can have one or more collections. Looking at the image on screen, we see that this repository is for Indiana University's Archive of African American Music and Culture. There are 3 collections in that repository, but this specific one is for Reclaiming the Right to Rock, Black Experiences in Rock Music Collection, 2008 through 2010. Lastly, we'll discuss the Samvera applications. These are Rails-based apps that follow Samvera conventions. Hyrax is its own full-stack application that allows you to better manage the content that you have in your digital repository. If you're familiar at all with Sophia or curation concerns, then a lot of how Hyrax operates will be familiar to you because Hyrax descended, if you will, from these 2 systems. It's primed to be used with Fedora, Solr, Blacklight, a relational database, and Rails, of course. One benefit of starting your application with Hyrax instead of starting your application with Rails is that Hyrax has a rich and growing set of features built in that are especially useful for repository owners. For instance, Hyrax provides account administrators with a user-friendly dashboard that gives us the ability to create and edit user profiles, configure workflows, generate work types and work type images, upload multiple files and folders, set user-level control over metadata, and more. Another advantage to using Hyrax is that it's supported and maintained by the Samvera community. Therefore, as time goes on, you receive the benefits of the upgrades, bug fixes, and new features that come with Hyrax instead of having to maintain these things separately. However, it may not be the best solution for every project. Hyku is what's known as a solution bundle, a repository app that's been bundled in such a way to deliver functionality for a specific set of cases. The use case for Hyku is multi-tenancy. It's built on top of Hyrax, so it comes with all of the features of Hyrax, but being multi-tenant means that there's a single repository owner that can create multiple Hyrax instances for that repository. For example, the Pennsylvania Academic Library Consortium, Incorporated, and the Private Academic Library Network of Indiana came together to form Hyku Commons and share a single Hyku application. Here we see 4, but eventually dozens of libraries that are part of the super consortia will have their own fully customizable tenant under Hyku Commons. In addition to multi-tenancy, we also get IIIF image and presentation API support, the universal viewer, and bulk import scripts. We also get greater customization options like adding fonts and custom CSS. While Hyrax alone is typically deployed locally and requires system administration and Rails development knowledge, Hyku is easier to deploy and maintain. Hyku as a service is also something that vendors in the community provide. As a repository owner, we wouldn't need our own development team, but we would still get a lot of say in the development of our product. This may be especially useful for library consortia. As of today, there are 2 companies that provide Hyku as a service. Ubiquity Press provides Ubiquity repositories at u-repo.io, and Notch 8 provides Hyku Up at hykuup.com. Avalon is the second solution bundle provided by the Samvera community. Its use case is for managing and providing access to large collections of digital audio and video. Version 7, available as of January 2020, was built on Hyrax specifically, while previous versions were built on the Samvera core components. With version 7 came 2 new ways to explore and display collections: a new transcoding dashboard that provides administrators with a way to manage jobs directly within Avalon, a redesigned homepage, and easier configuration of featured collections that are displayed on that homepage. In conclusion, we wanted to leave you with a visual image of the various technologies we just mentioned. We hope that you now have a better understanding of the pieces in the Samvera tech stack and how they all work together. Thank you for listening to our presentation on Samvera Tech 101. Are there any questions?
Keeping an eye on some things. Thank you very much for this. I should start my video.
If that's all, then shown here are a few ways to get in contact with myself, Shana, and Notch 8. Thank you again, and be sure to get your Connect 2020 swag from hykuup.com/swag.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Stop sharing my screen.
Okay. Could you go back one slide? There we go. So this is really, thank you for sharing that. Someone was like, let's make this the t-shirt for next year. But there are some questions in Q&A. Let's get to that. Well, they're not quite questions, but I'll repeat them. So great presentation. Thank you very much. We also have Notch 8 is very lucky to have you both.
Thanks.
Thank you. Another. Let's see here. Alberto Martinez. Is it possible to use Spotlight with Hyrax without having to duplicate cores and Rails, etc.?
I'm unsure. It is just a plugin, and Blacklight is like a part of the Hyrax application itself. So I would say I'd imagine maybe, but don't quote me on that. I'll get back to them.
Yeah, we have someone in Bess Sadler in the chat gave an answer saying not at this time, but it's a goal.
Thank you, Bess.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah. Keeping an eye on. Well, thank you very much. I know one of our challenges is we want to stay with our schedule. So I know that at 11:30 is Hyraxes make their homes among the clouds. I don't know if it's practice for us to skip ahead. Aha, there we go. Here's another question coming in. I'm not going to let you off the hook. So can different repos have distinct SSO or single sign-on?
Single sign-on, yeah. That's a good question too.
So there's I would assume this is from Robin, the different repos being the different tenants. Is that correct, Robin?
Yeah, in regards to Hyku, each one has their own.
Well,
Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Bess also responded in the chat that she hopes so because they are trying to deliver that right now. And the goals for the Pawnee Policy project, which is the super consortia that I spoke of with Hyku Commons, one of the goals for that project is for the different tenants to have different SSO.
Cool. And then another question is, can you describe just a bit more what Redis does?
You can kind of think of Redis as a caching, just like memory. So basically, I guess I could go back to that slide, but it's kind of far. Once you like spawn off a process to the background jobs, Redis is like the memory that keeps track of the job queue. It's probably the easiest way I can describe it. Does that make sense? So like you don't need a database to keep track of that stuff. It's just like a evolving cache.
Cool. More thank yous. Okay, we still have a few more minutes. Yeah. So thank you. Any other questions for our presenters?
You can go back here if you decide to reach out afterwards. It's always welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation.